Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Neo4j Online Meetup. I can't remember exactly what number we're up to, maybe 36 or 37. If you haven't joined us before, we'll just start with a little bit of admin. So today we've got Puri is going to be talking to us about a modern URL shortener that he's built. So I'm going to hand over to him in a minute. But before I do that, he's going to probably be showing some code. And so to make sure that you can see it properly, you'll need to make sure that your resolution is high enough. And you can do that if you click on the little cog button in the bottom right-hand side and set your resolution at least to 720p, and then you should be able to see everything. If you have any questions, I am watching the YouTube chat, so I will pass those on to Puria. You can write those on the right-hand side. Or if you're watching this afterwards, feel free to put something in the comments, or you can always join the Neo4j users Slack, so that'd be neo4j.com/Slack, and you can post any questions in the Neo4j Online Meetup channel on there. So just to quickly introduce Puria, so as I say, he's built a modern URL shortener, and I came across this while searching through our community graph for interesting projects that people have done. And I'll let him explain how he got into Neo4j and all that sort of stuff. So I'll hand over to you and let you present now. So enjoy the meetup, and if you have any questions, don't forget to ask. So yeah, you need to share your screen now.
Yeah. Hello there, and thanks, Mark, for inviting me. I'm really glad and excited to be here. And as you can see, sorry for my English and accent. Yeah, I'm not a native English speaker. So let's start with the presentation. We are going to talk about my first experiences with Neo4j. I built a modern URL shortener with Neo4j. The topics that we are going to cover is a little background about me and my previous experiences with databases. We are going to introduce COT, what it does, what the stack I used for COT, and the problems I encountered while using MongoDB, and why I moved from MongoDB to Neo4j, and how I discovered Neo4j, and how I used it, what mistakes I did with Neo4j, what I have learned. We are going to take a look at the app and a little about the deployment and stuff. We're also going to look at some code, very little. Then I'm going to discuss about my future ideas and future projects, and whether I'm going to use Neo4j or not, or we should use Neo4j. And a final overview of Neo4j. So I'm Puria, a front-end developer from Tehran, Iran. I have been doing JavaScript and React Redux for the past few years, and a bit of UI, UX, and design, and also backend. And my experiences with databases is mostly with NoSQL databases like MongoDB. So yeah, I'm kind of new in databases, and this presentation is from a front-end view of Neo4j and how beginners like me can start using Neo4j and how I did that. Yeah, you can find me on GitHub and Twitter. Some of my works on my GitHub. You can find my Twitter or Telegram to contact me. So how the story behind COT is that I had created this developers community in Telegram, which has more than 15 programming groups and 14,000 followers, and more than 8,000 active members in groups. Be sure to check it out. So in this community, thing that I used most was a URL shortener, and I wanted to build a open source project or app to um, um, to learn, mostly because of learning, and also wanted to clone something like Google and your shortener uh, also learn. And so I have built Cut, a modern URL shortener. You can check it out at cut.it and the code in the GitHub. Let's see the stack I've used. I've used React for the UI library. I use Next.js. It's basically React, but in the server. So everything renders in the server. It's mostly because of SEO and speed. Used Node.js and Express.js for the backend, and use Passport for the authentication. Redux is a state management for React. Also a start components, which is a CSS library for React, and a chart library, and most importantly, the Neo4j, the graph database that I used. So let's take a look at the app. Yeah. So this is the app. You can show any URLs here. Oops. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
so I've shared the link to it on the chat on the side. So
Yeah,
if you want to play along, you can have a look there.
yeah. If you just log in, you don't need to use the captcha. So we can here shortly. We can set a custom URL. We can set a password, and yeah, you can see it in the tables. Also, if we visit the link, we can now have the stats to view the stats. So this is the confusing part and the most hard part that made me to move the Neo4j that we are going to discuss in a minute. So I started with MongoDB in this project, and starting with MongoDB, well, everything was fine with user registration, authentication, and this stuff. But once I reached the stats part, I had some problems. So for the stats, storing stats, I needed to store the browser, the OS, Windows, Android, iOS, anything, the referrals, the country, and the date. So I needed to have a view array of um, these properties for each link, for each URL. So each URL would have a set of these views, a collection of views. So what I came up with for this in MongoDB, the schema was something like, the first thing that I came up was something like this. I had an array of dates for the views, array of referrals, um, array of browsers, and OS and locations. So there were a lot of problems with this. First of all, it wasn't really flexible, let's say, yeah. Because, for example, if I wanted to filter browsers from last week, I couldn't do that. Also, there were a lot of duplicated data. For example, let's say I had 40 different countries visiting a link. So for each URL, there were going to be a lot of duplication data. So this is the first one, was very bad. The second one was a little more flexible, array of objects, which each one is basically the view that you saw in the previous slide. So here we have the date, the referrals, the browsers, the OS, and the country, each one exclusively in each object, which gave me the ability to filter. But the problem here is, again, the when the number of let's say views reaches, for example, 1,000 views, but MongoDB is not very sufficient about that. We are going to create 1,000 of documents, a lot of so that the application data problem stays here too. So that was a no again. So yeah, that was the issues I had with MongoDB. Duplication of values, probably insufficient due to the large array of stats, and also not special laws for handling a large amount of relationships. For example, if I wanted to filter from last week or a specific range in time, I needed a lot of relationships. And the SQL, I really don't like the idea of tables here specifically. I needed flexibility because it was an app. I didn't have a very complete idea about what is going to be and the features it was going to have. So yeah, I needed flexibility so I can customize it and add more features later without touching a schema that much. The amount of joins would be a problem too, and also the same problems with MongoDB application of data and handling the relationships. So let's see. Yeah, storing the stats. So I moved to Neo4j, and why this slide is not running. Let's see.
So, Puri,
Yeah.
before you explain about moving to Neo4j, maybe you could do a quick explanation. How did you come across it as a potential solution? How did you
Yeah. That was.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Explain it in this slide. Yeah. So I was in the devs network, and I was talking with some other admins in the network, and I described my problems, the problems I had with MongoDB and the SQL stuff. And I presented them the schemas and had a discussion with them. So Thomas, one of the admins, recommended me to use a graph database. I was like, what is a graph database? I had no idea what is a graph database. I hardly used MongoDB before. So he sent me a YouTube introduction to the a link to the introduction in the YouTube. I watched that video, and well, I was really interested to see what is exactly what is exactly a graph database and what does it do. So I watched a couple more of introduction videos and read more about Cipher, and downloaded and installed Neo4j, which I must say the web browser and the UI experience was one of the reasons I started with Neo4j. Really smooth user experience was really for the Neo4j. Let's check out for the Neo4j desktop app. You can start very quickly. You can work with the examples. You can test, set up and run a database, work with it, and try Cipher right here. So let's say if there is the examples, yeah. So you can start and open browser really quickly and work with Cipher. So yeah, that was it. I installed Neo4j. It was like a couple of hours from when I heard the graph database word to the point where I used and worked with Cipher. So after working with examples, I was kind of interested to see what happens. And a couple of days later, maybe one or two, without knowing any knowledge about the graph database, I started just sketching some ideas for the Neo4j database. So I tried to, based on the introduction videos, which I watched in the YouTube channel of the Neo4j, I started sketching some of the ideas I had. So since I had some kind of schemas in the MongoDB, it was easier for me to just detect the nodes and try them in the graph. So I created this chart. I had in my mind that I'm going to have a user node that is going to have its properties, a URL, and a view. And how to detect what to use is basically I said myself, well, what are the important stuff that are going to be related and used as a relation too much. So the user was definitely the one that's was going to be a node, the URL. And if you noted in the previous slides, yeah, you might have noticed that the stats was inside the URL schema. So since the stats was a very important um, object or property here and was going to have a lot of relations, so I decided that yeah, the view object must be another node too. So yeah, I created this node here. By the way, this name, all of them is going to change in the production. But yeah, this was the first idea I had after getting a little familiar with graph databases. I pretty much implemented most of it, which let's see in the slides. Okay, so I decided I'm going to have a user which is going to create a URL and a URL which is going to have a visit node. So this visit node is going to have a node for each of stats properties. So we are going to have to separate nodes for each Firefox for all kinds of browsers that are supported. Yeah, I think it's 6 of them, Firefox and Chrome and stuff. We are going to have different nodes for Android and iOS and Windows and stuff. We are going to have different nodes for each referral link. So let's say if we have 1,000 visits from different URLs, from different users. So instead of creating, for example, facebook.com for each one of them, for example, 1,000 of facebook.com data uh, in the database, we are going to have a one node of facebook.com or twitter.com, and all that visit nodes are going to relate to that referral node, facebook.com or twitter.com. So already I'm going. This is very sufficient for working with stats in the URL shortener. So yeah, also the country. Yeah, the country is one of the more important one too, because for example, 100 or 200 up to 200 countries could be generated for each link. Imagine if well, 1,000 is a very good amount of visits, but if my site is going to be a big one, it's going to have more than like 10,000 different visit nodes in the month each month. So generating that amount of countries in that amount of visit nodes was going to be huge, and handling all of those also, and the size of the database, especially in the MongoDB, was going to be a huge problem. And also the most important one between the nodes is the date. So now I have the since I have a separate node for the date. Now I'm able to filter the stats based on what exactly I want. So I can put a range. I can say only visits that are related to the state. Yeah, I can do all kind of stuff based on date, and this is a lot of flexibility for a URL shortener. Even so, I don't need to even touch the schema if I needed to add more features later. So I can just use the current node and use the different relations, different queries to get exactly what I want. So each URL is going to have this number of visits, and each user also can have um, a lot of URLs. So yeah, each visit, we are going to have a lot of visits. We are going to have a lot of URLs that going to create visits, and we are going to have a lot of users that create a URL. And another thing that I needed as a feature for the cut.it was that I needed to support domains, custom domains. So, for example, you can use your custom domain as your a shortener, but use my website as an app. For example, mm, I don't know, xyz.com/anything would use cut to redirect to the link you want. So we are going to have a relation here too. And so each user can create a domain or delete a domain, and also each URL going to have a relationship with the domain. And this is exactly where the power of Neo4j shows itself. The number of relations um, that is going to be used. For example, if here, if I didn't have this relation to the from URL to the domain, if I deleted the domain and the URL ID was let's say example. So if another user and that example um, was going to be create a conflict with previous custom domains. So I would have a multiple example domains that each one redirect to another target. So now that I have the domain, even if user deletes its relation to a domain, so I still have the connection between the URL and domain. And now when a visitor mm, is going to visit a URL or ask for a URL, I'm going to query and ask, hey, what this URL is using? Is it using a domain? Is it using the default one? Is it using another domain? So at that point that the URL is created, whenever it has been related to, is going to be used. And also I needed to add IPs, which I haven't implemented yet, but I'm going to. this is a really interesting feature too. So each user going to have an IP. Each URL is going to have the IP to each visit also. So each one of them are going to use the IP in a different way. So one way that IP is useful, I can detect the spammer users that use phishing links and malware links to shorten them, and uh, I can ban them. I can detect the IP, and basically, based on the IP, I prevent them from signing up and relate them to all the visits that are created with this IP, all the URLs that are created with this IP, and simply remove them all. Another use case is I can get unique visitors for each IP. So if someone visits a URL twice or thrice, I can extract the unique visitors from each visit. So this was like a nightmare if I was going to implement it with MongoDB. And so the thing I liked about Neo4j was the graphs and the relationships. As we saw, actually, let's go to and see some codes here. Yep, here. Okay. So here is, let's first go to what I have used for the code. So as I mentioned, I've been using the Node.js for the backend. So the driver that I used for JS and for Neo4j was Neo4j driver. It's a Neo4j bolt for Next.js. So basically, how it works is you're going to create a Neo4j driver, and um, from that driver, you can create sessions, request to the write your query with Cipher, and after you're done, you can close the session. So that was what I did. I created the Neo4j instance here, used the config, used the username and password, created the driver, and used driver to call the queries. So here is the create visit one that we saw previously. I can match. First, I match the ID. I'm going to find the ID of the URL. For example, here is the ID of the URL. I'm going to match it. Second, I'm going to check if there is a domain or not. So if there is a domain, I'm going to find the domain. So I should be able to find the correct target to redirect it. So this is for the visit. So I'm going to find the correct URL to create the visit for it and create a relationship for it. So I create the visit node here. And by the way, this is basically I started coding these queries like a couple days after I met Cipher. So there will be a lot of improvements for this. This is the simplest thing that I came up with. So we are going to so I used merge to create each node. So there's this is the browser node, this is the country node, this is the OS node, this is the referral node. which each one of them is going to relate to the visit that we created based on the relationship they are going to have. One mistake that I had here was that I was using crate and that made the application in the stats. So here, instead of one, I was getting inaccurate stats like 3, 4, maybe two for sometimes two for each relationship. So using the merge solved that problem. And somewhere else, I used another mistake, which was going to I was using merge in a way that I was thinking, well, it's going to merge and it's not going to duplicate data. The way I was thinking about how merge works was a bit wrong, because for the merge, it's checking all the the data. So if even one of them has is a little different from the current one in the database, and it's going to create another one, and it's not going to replace current the current data with the new one. So yeah, be careful about that. So here, creates a new node, and merge checks if there is that data in the database. If there is, it's going to just replace or keep that, and it's not going to create a new one. So here is the very important point where we only want one relation between each visit and each uh, each uh, each one of the stats. So yeah, that was the creating visit one. Another part is creating URL shortener, creating the URL itself. So here, based on the domain, if there is a domain and there is a password, we are going to have a different query. So we are going to match the email and create the user. And if there is a domain, again, we are going to again use merge to prevent duplicated data. So when we create the URL, we are going to the existent domain, and we are not going to create another domain. So we are making sure if there is a domain for the user, we are going to point to that one. So we can have relationships from both user and the URL to the domain. Yeah, these two was the most important ones, and get URLs are is the same. And it's we are going to match the user based on the email, and we are going to get the URL, and we are going to get the URL based on the ID or the target to show it redirect it to the correct target.
Why do you use the optional match there?
Well, the optional match is for the domain, and some of them for the visit also. So when I'm going to get URLs, some of them is if the user is signed up, the stats feature is basically for the signed up users. So optional match is to check if the user might have visit nodes or might not have visit nodes. So if the optional was not here, it was going to match exactly the visit node, and there were no visit nodes. to grab them, so I was going to get errors,
Okay.
just the correct ones. Yeah, and for the domains too, because here I can easily set any domain. Say example.com. I can change, I can delete. So if there were no domains, I was going to have a problem. And as I said, each URL points to when I get the URL to show it, I'm checking if it's related to a domain or not. This is exactly what this line does. It's going to get the domain, and also I use some orders here, but most of the stats are using the JavaScript. But some basic ordering can be done with the Neo4j query. And also the search function, as you see here, I have used the search query here. So if there is a search, I'm going to say where the ID of the URL, L is the URL, the created URL. If the ID or the target of the URL matches the string. So here, let's create another user new for j.com. Okay. So now I have two. Now ID is before. Let's So before it's going to check both the short URL and the original URL. So here, if I say no, it's going to be no. If I say example, it's going to say example. So I can easily, with this only this while line of code, I was able to support both the filtering for ID and the target. So yeah, this is where I get the stats. This is the interesting part. I match optionally for the domain. I match optionally for the visits. So if there are Nobodies, just don't do anything. Also, maybe the user have visits, but the link the the date is not. For example, a link was viewed a month before. So if I press the day, I'm not going to get any visits. So also another check here to make sure that there is a visit in the range of time that user has specified. And
one thing is on the line 142 on there. So if you're using the regex, that doesn't make use of any indexes that you might have. So it will scan all of the links that it has on there. An alternative way you could do it is there's a keyword called contains that you can do instead of the regex. Obviously, it's not quite as powerful as a regex, but if you're only searching, you want to find the piece of text exists inside another piece of text, it might be sufficient, and then you would be able to index the target and ID, and it will sort of more quickly be able to find the appropriate ones. But if it works fine, then there's no need to change it. But just out of interest,
it's interesting. I have lost control. I wanted to show the server live, but it seems like I can't connect. And yeah, that was the getting URLs, creating URLs, finding URLs to redirect them, and getting and setting custom domains should be a really easy one. So I match the user, I optional match the if any URL owns that domain. So I'm going to merge the domain instead of creating one again. So maybe there was before another domain. For example, if I had, let's say, if I had, .com, as a custom domain and I deleted it, and the node was going to start stay there, or maybe more than one user use that domain. So if I was going to create user, I was going to have two nodes of the same domain. So I used merge to make sure that I'm going to have exactly one domain there. And um, I'm here saying the user that owns that domain return both user and the domain. Delete is the easy one. Another another query that I use most is the detach feature, specifically for removing spammers with detach. You can say that remove the node and all of its relations. So if I say delete user, delete the URL, it's going to delete all the relations to the URL and the URL node itself. It's a really cool one that you can use. Here is the delete URL. Yeah, I used it here, delete detach. So I use the both, so I remove both visits and the URLs. If I can here remove the example, it's going to remove both the stats and the URL node and the URL node too. And yeah, this is the get stats. Let's say yeah, the last one. So I'm going to, for the stats, I match the URL based on the ID. Here it was before anything, or can be a custom URL. You can set anything here too. So I'm going to also match the user that has created this URL. Um, and I'm going to check a domain. Here is a JavaScript binary operator to check if domain exists. Run this query. If you don't have a domain, just do nothing. So I'm going to match the domain too. And most of this stuff was not related to the stats. It was just because maybe I wanted to show them what I have, or because it's a custom domain. Okay. Okay. Oh, I put the link wrong. So these are the to show the target, to show the correct link, and to get the stats. So some of them are for that. I'm going to match the visit node, which is visited, for the L, which is the URL that I matched already. And for each visit node, I'm going to match the corresponding I'm going to alias domain name as a domain to work it easier here. And o.os are the alias stuff. For example, the date node contains object with date property. So I'm going to just to alias at the date. So instead of d.date, I'm going to only get the date. So easier to work with. And at the end, I'm going to order them based on the date from last to first. And also this one, the second object that I passed to the read transaction session for the for the driver are the parameters that I'm going to pass. Here I have the email. Here I have the domains, the JavaScript. It's equal to this, but I'm passing the domain and I'm passing the ID, so I can use it here with a $sign before. So Neo4j Cipher is going to detect this domain and is going to replace it here and the email here and the ID here. So here I'm just these are the JavaScript stuff. I'm some sort of filtering and sorting them better, but the important stuff is I'm going to get each one of them and filter them based on the date and also use them for the domain. I send them all together, so React handles them in the front end. Instead of calling API each time, I have all of the data and I can just check it out. Yeah, that was that. This was that was URL. This is the user. The user is the easy ones. We are going to match the user for the get user just based on the email or API key. The code also supports API key. If you are interested, you can use API and don't use the app itself. You can use so API keys to create user. So I'm basically using API or email to get the user, and optional match again any URL that user has created, because user might have one, might doesn't have any. So I can also give some stats of how many URLs the user have created so far. So creating user is again I'm going to use merge just to make sure maybe and set the hashed password, the verification token. Yeah, nothing fancy here, just creating a user. For verifying two, well, this is the new one. I used set. I haven't used anywhere else. I can change data's a property using set. So here I verify the user by changing the verified status from false to true. Also, if I change it to the null, it's going to be removed. So here, in this way, I can verify the user for change password. So I'm using set again. I'm replacing password with the new hashed one that user has entered. Also, the API key, I can generate the API key each time. So yeah, the little more complicated one was the creating a stats and visits and all of these other stuff. For example, resetting password. I'm just going to make sure the token is invalidated. And yeah, so anything else might have missed? No, I talked about all of them. So this was, as I said, a couple of days after I got comfortable with the Cipher. I already see some improvements.
So how long did it take you to write this application in total?
In total, more than 2 months, but I must say that it was a side project, so I only put 2 or 3 hours per day, so after work, and also that the first month was I was using MongoDB, and the design was completely different. So after the first month, I completely wrote everything from scratch and redesigned the app, especially the database stuff. So yeah, 1 month maybe.
Yeah, I guess we're getting close to 1 hour, so maybe we can Maybe you can summarize some of your
yeah.
experience.
The thing I worked and gained with working with Neo4j was firstly getting familiar with graphs and relationships. That was very interesting for me, how these relationships work, and how graph database works. It was something very new to me. And Cipher was one of the coolest parts of the Neo4j. It's really enjoyable to work with Cipher. It's very close to, let's say, human language. It's as the abstraction is higher more from other databases, maybe other query languages. And also the app, web browser, and visualization. If it wasn't for the web browser, I wouldn't maybe even use the Neo4j. It was I just installed the app, clicked one button, and worked with Cipher example. That was really cool. And the flexibility now, I have. If you look at the issues, there are a lot of features that are going to be created, and with these nodes and relations, it's really easy to add features to the app. And the performance, MongoDB, so Neo4j is very specialized in the relationships. So as you see, the app was very fast. So I really liked the performance. I knew that I was going to have some problems with SQL databases and other NoSQL databases. So what I missed was basically no, there wasn't enough sources, the tutorials and the examples. Um, I myself wanted to create some tutorials, but didn't have enough time. But the lack of articles was a little strange for me. Um, I mean, there was articles, but not as much as MongoDB. For example, if you open any weekly newsletter, you're going to see at least one or two tutorials for NoSQL databases. So um, if there if there were enough if there were more tutorials, more people would know the Neo4j. Some of my friends never had of Neo4j like myself, which is really sad because it's sad to miss this awesome project, which is very easy to work with. As I said, I was a noob in databases, but I catch up really quickly with the Neo4j stuff. So I don't know if we have time for the deployments.
Yeah, we can do a bit on that.
So for the deployments, I basically raise the Neo4j site. Okay. So I basically just first of all, the driver that connected the Node.js to the Neo4j already introduced it here. So nothing here, nothing really hard here. The only hard part was installing it on the server. So I was going to use VPS um, for deploying the app. So let's search for Debian first. Yeah. So if you download the app, as you saw, it's very easy. You can activate, you can open the browser and work with it in seconds. But instead on the server, I'm working with terminal, might be a little frustrated. But the tutorial steps I followed are exactly this, but the thing that you must notice is the Java version. So I think I had Java 7 or 9, and it was driving me nuts why it doesn't work. It was just the Java version. So one of the main things is make sure you have the correct Java version and follow um, these steps. So I installed it. Everything worked fine, and I used, where is the command here? Um, yeah, here. Um, I just type this and Neo4j started, and everything else is handled via the Neo4j driver and the backend itself. So I was just going to start the project, also doing some configs with them. Um, uh, Neo4j config to specify maybe the name of the the name of the uh, your database name. Yes. So let's see if I can find config file. Not sure where it is. So another thing that you're probably going to miss after installing on the server is the web browser. It's basically not going to work at first with the custom. Obviously, it is not going to work with the local host because it's on your server, and if you enter your IP, it's not going to work either because you need to enable some stuff in the config and make sure to enable it. So I'm not sure if you want to do that because you're going to um, expose this web browser to everyone, although it is protected with the password, but still that might be useful. Specifically in my case, which time to time I need to just check if there is any phishing list, someone reported anything or not, so I can remove or ban them by hand, which a form should do that by, yeah, I still do that by hand. Another thing to maybe note while deploying is to use a different server for the mm, for your Neo4j to keep it separate from the app. So I had this problem when my VPS crashed or my app crashed or one of those two were going to crash. It was going to affect the another. Uh, and also you can use online Neo4j hosts available for you if you're not interested to deploy it in your own VPS. Yeah, even the Neo4j. Yeah. Okay, and that was really what I did for the deployment. I installed the Neo4j, I started it, and I was good to go. Let's
Cool.
look at, yeah, let's look at.
We've probably got only a couple of minutes left now, so I'll let you wrap
Okay,
up.
just look at the example config just to make sure. Yeah, that's all the thing I also did in the backend. Just put the username and stuff, and the driver was going to handle all of that connecting to the database. So let's talk about my future projects. That I have this idea to use the Neo4j for um, uh, it's the guard bot. It's a bot to manage groups in the Telegram. It's Telegram is a messenger which you are able to create different groups. So with this idea and using Neo4j, I can easily allow the user to use this bot to create different network, different instances of the bot for each group they are going to manage. So let's say a user can add the bot to different groups and be admin in a network which contains different groups, or be a member in another network, or a user can be banned in another network, but it can use another network's groups. Also, there are related to each one of the groups. They can be member of one, they can be admin in one, they can be banned in one. So I didn't put them in. And yeah, thanks for following.
Cool.
That was it. Yeah.
All right.
Sorry
Thanks, Priya, for the talk. For everybody still watching, if you like the talk, don't forget to press the like button on the YouTube video so other people can find it as well. And maybe we do give you a couple of seconds if you have any questions you want to ask. Now is your chance. And I guess we can share this the GitHub link as well, can't we?
Yeah, it's in the slide as well. You can share the slide as well, but let me here.
I think I have so I'll share the GitHub link on there, and then cool. So yeah, so if you're watching afterwards, the link's on the right hand side. I guess I don't see any questions, so I guess we can wrap up there. So thanks everyone for coming. Next week we're gonna do an online meetup about the GQL proposal, which was posted earlier this week. So if you want to see what that's about, I'm going to put the link on the chat, so you can have a look at that. This is a proposal for having one graph query language, and we're going to have a couple of my colleagues, Amy and Alistair, will be going into more detail on that next week at the same time as this. But I guess that'll do for today. So thanks again to Priya for spending the time presenting to us, and thanks to everybody
for having me.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.